Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Khalil Doheny, and I am the Senior Content Marketing Manager at Digital Niche Agency. I'm really excited for today's webinar. We have the team of Everin here. We have Weaver and Josh from Everin. Josh, Weaver, how are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Looking forward to it.
Doing well.
Awesome. Weaver, do you want to give us a little bit of your background, your history, and how you got to start Everin Technologies today?
Yeah, sure. We're trying to run this slide deck from two different locations. So, Josh, will you go to the slide that's slide number 2? That's the sort of ego wall slide.
It's up.
So let's start with a little bit about me, including how I got to start this company. And the reason I think you might want to have some insight is that I'm the CEO of the company that I hope you'll invest in, and you might want to know something about who this guy is. So I'm a Vietnam vet and the son of a World War II glider infantryman who was also in Korea and Vietnam, and the grandson of a World War I vet. I have founded or worked in 5 life science companies, including my first company, Ixion Biotechnology. You see the logo here. Primary hyperoxaluria was its product, and it was sold to a Swedish company named QMed AB. And most recently, I co-founded OB Medical Company, which developed a labor and delivery device for women who were in labor, which was sold to Philips Healthcare with a pretty nice return for the investors. But this company, Everin, with its transformative device to help people with PTSD, is the one that's closest to my heart. I lost several good friends who didn't come home from Nam. And there were others who did come home, but they left something behind as a result of what they saw and did there. And I grew up around my father and his World War II friends. And this company is dedicated to them and to others like them. Oh, and by the way, I've invested over $500,000 of my own capital in Everin. I got my undergraduate degree from Dartmouth, was commissioned as second lieutenant in the infantry after I graduated from the ROTC. I went to UVA Law School. I call myself a recovering lawyer. I then served my 2 years of active duty, including a year in Vietnam. My professional career began at the Wall Street law firm of Dewey, Ballantyne, Bushby, Palmer, and Wood, former Governor Dewey, who I got to work with. More interesting guy than you would have guessed from the news reports. I then spent some time in other companies until landing in my last pre-life and sciences company, the Mutual Life Insurance Company of New York. I left there to join the national campaign staff of the Bush Quayle re-election campaign. And when it became very clear that a tour in Washington wasn't going to be in the cards on account of he didn't get reelected, I founded my first company, Ixion, in which I like to say I made every mistake you could possibly make, except some mistakes which I couldn't make because a previous mistake had foreclosed them. And I got involved in Everin because I heard about these scientists at the University of Florida who had developed a technique for treating PTSD, and I knew about PTSD, and I thought it was an area of great need, and so I wanted to do something about it. So would this be a good time to show the video, guys?
Exactly. Let me share my screen here. Yeah, we wanted to show you guys the campaign video for Everin on Start Engine. Let me pull that up real quick.
My name's Andy. I joined the military when I was 17 years old. I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2015. PTSD absolutely changed my life forever.
It's estimated that 60 million Americans suffered from PTSD just last year. We typically think of veterans, but first responders and healthcare workers get PTSD at the same rates, and 1 in 9 women will have it at some point in their lives. So for those seeking treatment, 66% still have significant symptoms that they need help with. Everent's Phoenix earbud is a breakthrough in the treatment of PTSD. The Phoenix delivers a personalized level of electrical stimulation through the skin of the ear and targets the vagus nerve.
This technology promises to be a game changer. I've seen patients who go from severe and debilitating PTSD to significant symptom reduction, and in some cases, complete remission. What Everent provides is a comprehensive solution for both treating and monitoring the progress of my patients with PTSD.
I mean, I realized like I needed change. I needed something. My wife would say that she got her husband back, and my kids would say that they got their father back.
Awesome.
All right. So thank you very much for that. Josh, could you go to slide 3, the tale of two Marines?
And before we dive into the presentation here, I do want to thank the audience for attending today's webinar. This webinar is for you, the investors and the potential investors who plan to invest in Everent. This is your opportunity to get your questions answered. So throughout this presentation, if a question does pop up, please ask it below in the Q&A box, and we will have some time towards the end of the webinar to get your questions answered. And yeah, with that being said, go ahead and take it away, Weaver.
Okay, so you see here two Marines, Corporal Chad Oleschlager. These are real people, by the way. He was a Marine deployed to Iraq, which he called the scariest place on earth. Though he survived, part of him never left. When he got home, he showed all the signs of PTSD. He was drinking about a bottle of whiskey a day. He panicked at the sound of a car backfiring and went around potholes in the road as though they contained roadside bombs. He had nightmares and would wake up choking his fiancée. When he went for help, doctors started him on Prozac, and eventually he was on 7 prescriptions, totaling 18 pills a day. It didn't help him. Nothing helped him. Medication has clearly taken effect. His medical record reads, the patient's emotional numbing and detachment is palpable. He has broken off his engagement, saying he cannot feel things anymore, and that he's afraid of his angry and violent thoughts. 2 days after this note, Chad was dead. Not of suicide, like so many others, about 13 times normal, but of accidental multiple drug toxicity. There was no good place for Chad to turn until now. So I've told you about Chad. Let me tell you about a different experience. Gunnery Sergeant Andy Io, who you just saw, who was also deployed to Iraq and also came home with PTSD. He was a participant in our pilot trial who got much better after using our prototype Phoenix, which is a vagal nerve stimulator, and I'll tell you in a few minutes what that means. And as he said in the video, my therapist would say, and she has said, that I've completely changed. My wife would say that she got her husband back, and my kids would say they got their father back. And that are the two alternatives that are available, I think, in this modern time. Next slide. So a lot of people have heard about PTSD, but they don't know exactly what it is or why it's so bad. The short answer is that PTSD is what happens when you fail to recover from traumatic stress. People with PTSD relieve the trauma over and over in flashbacks and nightmares as though it had just happened. It leads to a heightened anxiety state known as hyperarousal, which disrupts your sleep and concentration. You are always on red alert and you never feel safe. To cope, people with PTSD avoid triggers that cause painful memories. So they avoid places that they can't go and don't do things that they would like to do because it'll trigger their return of the trauma. It shows up as extreme guilt or depression or emotional numbness. You have sudden and uncontrollable outbursts of anger or violence like Chad, which disrupts your family life and your work, and it leads to divorce and unemployment and homelessness. And is often, in fact, even usually accompanied by conditions like depression, alcohol and substance abuse, and as I said, rates of suicide up to 13 times normal. In short, your life sucks. How bad is it? Well, here's a quote. A 17-year Forest Service wildfire smoke jumper, the people that jump in and put these fires out, said when he retired, quote, "In my career, I was almost burned over 4 times, but nothing has been more a threat to my life than the symptoms of PTSD." Next slide. So PTSD is an enormous market. It's a $22.5 billion problem. And although most people have heard of PTSD, and almost all, in fact, all of you listening to this undoubtedly know somebody who has it, although you may not know it, many are surprised by just how big the problem is. In a given normal year, about 15 million Americans have PTSD. Last year, that jumped to over 60 million because basically COVID led to a lot of PTSD, a lot of trauma for people resulting in PTSD. It imposes over $42 billion of costs to our society. And while most traumatized people recover, most people will have a trauma in their lifetime and most people will recover from it. But not everyone gets better. And in fact, 15 to 20% of people in the military, but not just the military, EMTs, firefighters, police, ICU nurses, COVID nurses, emergency department personnel, and others will develop PTSD. Perhaps surprisingly, 1 in 9 women will have PTSD in the course of their life. And that's the largest single group of people that get PTSD. And women have 2 to 3 times a higher risk of developing the condition than men. It's the 4th most frequently diagnosed mental condition, and the unmet medical need means there's a total market opportunity, as I said, of over $22.5 billion. So we have a large and growing market, consumers who want to buy our product. That's the definition of a product market fit. And we are the only company presently focused on PTSD management and treatment. Next slide, Josh. Alas, most patients, 2/3 in fact, make that little 2/3 come in, Josh, like Chad, get little or no relief from the first-line therapy standards of care, which are prolonged exposure therapy and selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors or drugs. Of those who get a legacy treatment, 58% say they're still suffering even after the treatment. And very few, only less than 10%, feel like they've recovered. Prolonged exposure therapy works for those that can tolerate the therapy, but most do not even reach remission, and psychotherapy is often not available. Many can't tolerate even the idea of prolonged exposure therapy. So imagine the worst day of your life, and prolonged exposure therapy goes like this: come in and we'll talk about it over and over again until it doesn't bother you anymore. And many times they can't talk about it even once. Self-medication, like booze or psilocybin or pot or Molly or ecstasy, is a common response, but it generally doesn't work either. We were contacted out of the blue by a medically retired former combat medic asking when she would be able to be prescribed the Phoenix device. She said, quote, "I have tried absolutely everything, from mind and body therapy, acupuncture, alpha stim, cupping, biofeedback, cognitive behavioral therapy, art therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and the endless trial and errors of medication, and none of it worked." So there's a huge unmet need for PTSD treatment that current first-line treatments simply cannot adequately address. Next slide. Now, fortuitously, we happen to be on the bubble of 2 big trends in the medical device world. One is bioelectronics medicine, which basically uses targeted electrical signals to harness the body's natural mechanisms for cure. Bioelectronics medicine is predicted to grow to about $60 billion as a segment by 2029. And McKinsey and Company said bioelectronics medicine represents a multi-billion-dollar opportunity and has the potential to become a pillar of medical treatment. Second segment that we're also participating in is wearable technology like trackers and the smartphones and diagnostic, therapeutic pain applications, earplugs, chest straps, smart clothing, and so forth. And according to the approaches that we've been reading about, that market should reach $30 billion by 2026. And superimposed on all of this is the size of the market for PTSD, which we will deal with a wearable bioelectronic solution. And as I said, that's a $22.5 billion market today. Next slide. So we have a product pipeline. The first item in our product line is the CR100, which is a research use only device. You see an example of it in the left-hand corner of this slide. That was developed with SBIR phase 1 funds, and we plan to launch it in October of this year. It's programmable through a PC interface. It has fully flexible parameters, allowing the researchers to set the duty cycle and the parameters of the intensity of the electronic stimulation and so forth. And it's aimed at the research market. The CR100 architecture will be used in what we're calling the P51, our patient-facing device, which we expect to have sufficiently similar in functionalities to the ultimate form factor, which is a total self-contained earbud, which can be used as a commercial device. And once it's authorized for sale by the FDA, we'll be able to use it while we're developing the final ultimate form factor, which is that earbud that you see. We call it the P51, by the way, as a sort of in-joke, because the P38 was the original can opener that you got with C rations, and it was later increased to a P51. And just thought I would show you, there is one of the prototypes of the CR100, just to show you that it's embodied, although the label system has been changed to look better than the one that is in that prototype. All right, next slide. Here's a little bit about the Phoenix CR100. It's going to be a research gold standard. We expect it to generate our first product revenue later this year. We developed it after talking to quite a few clinicians who were in vagal nerve stimulation research. It does not require FDA approval. It only has to be approved by institutional review boards, and we're confident it will be. And we know there are thousands of patients currently in various forms of VNS, vagal nerve stimulation trials, including transcutaneous auricular VNS, which is vagal nerve stimulation reaching the auricular branch of the vagus nerve through the ear. That's the auricular part. So next slide. The next device in the product pipeline, as I said, is the P51. It's smaller and simpler than the CR100, but once the CR100 is developed, making the P51 is simply removing some of the extra capabilities which the commercial device does not require. We don't want them meddling with the stimulus parameters and so forth. We've already been informed by the FDA that it qualifies for de novo classification. De novo classification is like a 510K, which means it's much faster, cheaper, and simpler than a pre-market approval, a PMA, which we are not. We expect to use it in our pivotal trial, which is scheduled for July of next year. And then, as I said, the ultimate form factor will follow. Next slide. So at this point, if you haven't dozed off, you're wondering just exactly how does Phoenix treat PTSD? So as I told you before, PTSD is a result of your body not recovering from a trauma. And what's happened is the trauma has led to a nervous system which isn't adaptive to its environment. So in PTSD, the normal safety response of the nervous system, which is the rest and digest part, is downregulated. It suppresses that and it upregulates the fight or flight response. The technical terms for this are the autonomic nervous system, which has the sympathetic and parasympathetic branch. But what you need to know is that that's the safety response and the fight or flight response. And the key to regulating the safety response is the vagus nerve. Basically, the vagus nerve controls the safety response. And our well-being is very much dependent on a functional and adaptive nervous system. And PTSD has led to a maladaptive system. And the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve and the longest nerve in the body, is the key to the safety part of the nervous system. So that's the reason PTSD makes people feel unsafe all the time. Because the phoenix delivers stimulation to the auricular branch of the vagus nerve through the ear, the effect of it is to return the nervous system and bring it back into balance and let people feel safe again. Next slide. So, okay, it's a big need. There are a lot of people out there with a problem that isn't being solved. Is this device going to solve the problem? And the answer is we've pretty much taken the risk out of the question of whether the technology will work. In 2017, there was a randomized controlled trial, proof of concept trial, in which transcutaneous auricular vagal nerve stimulation was shown to have a very positive effect in a PTSD population. That trial was done by our inventors, and it resulted in a seminal paper showing the effect. Then Everin conducted a safety trial a year and a half ago, which was extremely well tolerated, and there were no adverse events at all in anybody in the normal healthy population. And then last year, we did our pilot trial in a PTSD population, and the results were extremely positive. The system reduced the symptoms, sometimes significantly. You heard Dr. Marshall talk about that in the video at the beginning of this presentation. There was a 91% responder rate, which is really quite high. There was a significant improvement in people's quality of life. That's what QOL means, quality of life. And we got a 95.5 net promoter score, meaning when we asked the people to rate on a score of 1 to 10, whether they would recommend this product to their family or friends or to somebody else, 95.5 was the resulting score. Nobody scored it below 7, and most people scored it 9 or 10. And 70 is considered a really good net promoter score. And finally, we got a breakthrough device designation from the FDA, which means the FDA thought it was going to be a good improvement, or might be a good improvement over the standard of care. And based on the results of the pilot trial, after 5,000 simulations, our statistician predicted success in the pivotal trial to come, which we have to do before we can get the FDA de novo classification. Next slide. So these are the key milestones we expect in the future, provided we get adequate funding. This is what we're going to do. And you can see in 2022, this year, we have an SBIR phase 2 pending. That's $1.8 million that we have a good chance of getting. That's non-dilutive funding. We have an Army Small Business Technology Transfer Research Grant, which we have the phase 1 running right now. We'll apply for phase 2 later this year. That can also be a multi-million-dollar project. We will be installing our electronic quality management system using a grant that we got from the Military Technology Enterprise Consortium. We'll launch the CR100, which generates the first revenues this year. And then you can see some of the other things that we expect to do. We're going to continue development of the P51 in 2023, critically starting the pivotal trial. We have a tracking app that's a smartphone app that will launch then. We expect the trial to end in 2024. We expect to be granted de novo classification, which will be the authority to commence marketing in 2024. And then we'll actually start the marketing in 2025, which is when we'll reach out for our first contracts with the VA, and we'll continue the development of the earbud. Next slide. So how are we going to go to market? Well, we intend to go to market with a direct-to-consumer market strategy. So the entry market, we already know patients want this solution. And the entry target market is the military. Now, basically anybody with PTSD is in our target market, but the thing about the military is they're the easiest to reach. There are about 20 million vets out there. They share a common bond as a result of their experiences, and the population has an urgent need for PTSD services and products. Their average income is higher than the national median, and they focus on online spending because of their mobility and relocation in the course of their career. We intend to use some high-end affinity groups as a rallying, like Rally Point or Together We Serve or Wounded Warrior. Veterans go and look at these groups, and these groups are interested in helping people reach solutions to their problems. And for the non-vets, we expect to use a general digital marketing campaign. It's essentially a proven model in digital consumer marketing in which we will use social media to generate awareness of the product, build the credibility in the brand, and then drive the consumer to make purchases. So we'll be playing in a fertile field. The healthcare consumer landscape is changing. You probably know this yourself. You, during the pandemic, no doubt went to Dr. Google on occasion, and engaged consumers are increasingly proactive about their care management. They do more self-research, and they desire greater levels of self-service, access to information, greater choice, and real-time interactions. PTSD patients are especially engaged. We know because we've asked them, they will self-pay at the price point that we've picked, and they especially want to control their therapy because the condition is so much as a result of the lack of control they have over the condition that has affected them. Next slide. So, do we have the management team that can bring this solution to the marketplace? It's a great market, it's a great product. Who cares if we can't actually get it on the marketplace and achieve a result that will result in a good return to our investors? And we have a good team. Three of us, myself, Neil Juliana, our Chief Technological Officer, and Kimberly Ramsey, our Chief Financial Officer, all work together at OB Medical Company. I've had 40 years of startup biotech and medical device business experience. And as I said, my last company, OB Medical, was a financial and product success. Dr. Neil Juliano, our Chief Technical Officer, is an experienced medical device developer with 7 FDA devices and 40+ patents and several successful companies. He was also the Chief Technical Officer of OB Medical. And Kimberly Ramsey, our CFO, has multiple successful biotech, medical device, and high-tech companies under her belt and was part of the medical device team. Marcus Elliott, our Vice President for R&D, has extensive quality and manufacturing experience, in addition to his product development experience and research. Chris Eitug, who has an MBA from Duke and held a variety of positions in pharma tech and biotech, including working for Glaxo as their Director of Business Development. And Josh Kelly, who is running the slides here, at least I hope he is because I can't see them, was a digital marketing expert with a University of Florida degree in public relations, and most recently worked on a special election in Georgia for the Senate in 2020. Myself, Juliano, and Ramsey are serial entrepreneurs. And in the aggregate, this management team has raised over $150 million in funding for various entities, has 13 FDA clearances, 16 device clearances, 9 successful exits, including 3 IPOs. And of course, we'll have to add additional people in the future when we move into greater operations, for example, a quality management person, another R&D engineer, and a clinical device, a clinical trial associate. Next slide. So what's out there? that I've talked about already, the unsatisfactory nature of what's out there at the moment. And here's what I think the competitive landscape looks like. So as I told you, there are 2 approved treatments, drugs, primarily selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and exposure therapies. The drugs have really bad side effects. I mean, diarrhea, nausea, dizziness, confusion, hallucinations, somnambulance, impotency, fatigue, female sexual disorder, changes in mood, anxiety or behavior, serotonin syndrome or narcoleptic, malignant syndrome like reactions, eye problems, etc. They're bad. They're really a bad drug. And they cost a lot too. So they can range from $2,800 for Paxil to $4,000 a year for Zoloft. Depends on your drug plan, of course. They weren't designed for chronic use, and they don't work well in chronic use. And they typically result in somebody taking more than 1 or even 2 drugs, like Chad, the young corporal who died of multiple drug toxicity. The symptoms return, and the product doesn't work, curiously enough, as well for men as it does for women, and it doesn't work well for anybody. Exposure therapy, or prolonged exposure therapy, since avoidance is one of the problems of PTSD, it's one of the reasons people won't even try it. As I said, it's like, imagine the worst day in your life and come in and we'll talk about it. Frequently, it's just plain unavailable, particularly in rural areas where psychiatrists and psychologists aren't around. That's if you would go in the first place. It also has a high cost because it requires multiple sessions at $150 or more per session. Symptoms often return here too, and sometimes they're even worse because you've been reopposed to the trauma, and people drop out from that as well. People have tried a variety of alternatives. There's MDMA, which some people call Molly or ecstasy. It's presently an illegal drug, although it may work in PTSD. There are other psychedelics are being evaluated as well, like psilocybin. But a lot of people don't want to take drugs, and they don't want to take psychedelic drugs, and they don't want to take illegal drugs. And so it's not much of a help for them. There's a company, Freespira, which has a medical device that works for panic attack, and particularly the panic aspect of PTSD. But it involves sticking a cannula up your nose. It costs about $1,750 over a 28-day period. It's basically paced breathing. That is, it's teaching you how to breathe, which will affect the vagus nerve, and it's clearly not wearable. You can use yoga or meditation, which are also ways of stimulating the vagus nerve through breathing or the meditative state. And finally, there's something called the stellate ganglion block, which is an operation and which has had some success with some people, but in general, it's an operation. It is not an established treatment, and evidence is not conclusive. And as I told you from the patient's perspective, I read you that report from the retired combat medic that she tried everything and nothing worked. We are the only company focusing solely on PTSD with an effective SAFE, an IP protected approach that doesn't have the side effects and bad results that this competitive landscape indicates in the competitive environment. Next slide. Now, while we're targeting PTSD, we're not a one-trick pony. We're not at the moment aiming at any of these things, but there are adjacent target indications which are highly amenable to the use of vagal nerve stimulation to deal with. And you see some of them here: workplace stress, which is $13 billion, anxiety and depression, which is $22 billion, sleep aids, a big one, $70 billion. A lot of people trying to get results from their inability to sleep. And that compares with a PTSD market of $22.5 billion. So the whole arena where vagal nerve stimulation might be available is quite sizable. Next slide. So if you make an investment, how will you make a return? And the answer is, we think what we're going to do is see this company acquired. like OB Medical was acquired by Philips Healthcare, but by somebody else. Acquisitions are consistently occurring, and they're occurring earlier in the life cycle, with angel and seed stage companies being at about 60% of the 2021 acquisitions. And acquisition is still the most common exit type for startups. This isn't a representative example of companies known to be active acquirers or interested in our space, and 2 of them, in fact, have already expressed an interest in a possible combination with us. We expect this event to occur sometime within the next 4 years, which will be roughly 8 years after the company was founded, which is within the normal range from founding to exit for a startup medical device company. And just for what it's worth, the recent metric is about 15 times revenue. And that's what we would expect in our case as well. Although, if the revenue is good, you might get better than that. Next slide. So, in short, these are the investment highlights of why we think an investment in Everin makes good sense. First, the PTSD market is $22.5 billion, mostly unexploited, and we have a product that people want. All of our participants wanted it, and in fact, at the end of the trial, all of them wanted to keep it and didn't want to give it back. We're already the leader with our focus on PTSD, and we hope to retain that position moving forward, because that's what we're going to concentrate on, and that's where I think we can do the most immediate good. We're positioned for growth, as I said to you before, at the intersection of multi-billion-dollar areas, the bioelectronics medicine area, where you use electrons to treat disease instead of drugs, and the wearable, particularly wearable medtech, where people want to be able to carry this stuff around and use it when they need it. There's been clinical validation, so the clinical risk is much reduced. We have been successful so far in getting over $500,000 in non-dilutive funding, and we have a $1.8 million phase 2 NIH grant pending. We have a good chance for that, and we expect more to come. We achieved breakthrough device status, meaning the FDA thinks that our device offers the possibility of better than the standard of care. And we have an experienced leadership team, which, as I said, you has been able to drive success in the past and can drive it with Everin in the current future. But there is one commanding reason to invest in Everin. Yes, the company is a success. We can, as we expect it to be, you will be able to make money with this investment. But as important, perhaps more important, in some senses, there are so many people hungry for our solution to their PTSD, and your investment will help us help them. So last slide. So that's why we wanted to come to you all and say, give us a crack at solving the problem of PTSD as it presently exists in today. So Khalil and Josh, that's where the formal part of this is over, and we're open for answering questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Weaver. As Weaver mentioned, now it's the time to ask your questions. I already see some questions coming on in. That's great. We'll get to those shortly. I do want to remind everyone that everyone is raising an equity crowdfunding campaign on Start Engine. I am going to add the Start Engine link in the chat box below. So if you want to learn more or want to get more information about Everin and what they're doing over there, please check out that raise page link. There are going to be some questions I know everyone wants to ask around the financials, the valuation, the use of proceeds. Unfortunately, we can't discuss those answers on this webinar, but if you do have a question around those key topics, please send an email to Weaver, and he will reach out to you, and all that information will be on that raise page link. So please check it out and reach out if you wanted to get those types of answers, types of questions answered. With that being said, let's go into our first question here. We have a question from Richard. Do you have any key partnerships?
So if you're talking about development partners, the answer to that is yes, we do. We are using a company called Triple Ring Technologies out in California to help us with the mechanical and electrical engineering to develop the ultimate form factor, the earbud in the ear. Khalil, can people see me, or am I gesturing to a blank screen?
No, they could see it.
Okay. They're very well known in this field. They've done this kind of thing in the past. We have a development partner in the form of Convergent Engineering, which is actually also overseen by our Chief Technology Officer, who've done a fair amount of the computer programming. And we have a software developer who has developed the symptom tracker app. I didn't talk much about it, but we have a smartphone app that will be available to people with PTSD that allow them to track their symptoms. And we've been working with them. We have not picked a manufacturing partner yet. And we don't have any, if by partnerships you mean, are we partner with anybody in offering this product? The answer is no. So Richard, if that didn't answer the question, type another one.
He does have another question here, actually. How advanced is the current technology?
If you know what technical, the TLC level, the technical level in the military goes from 1 to 7, ours is at 5. What that means is that the fundamental characteristics of the ability to stimulate the vagus nerve has been settled and taken care of. The CR100 device that'll be used in the clinical trial, the clinical research area, is well developed. It's waiting its safety testing to be sure that we can persuade an institutional review board that it's okay. So I would say that most of the technological risk has been squeezed out of this product, and the rest of it is mechanical engineering activities, which are not brain surgery. They don't require anything new or unusual, just have to get it done. So I would say well advanced. Then I see you also have asked, PTSD is an issue that many individuals around the world struggle with. Do you have plans to expand in other regions or establish a distribution network that facilitates that? The answer is yes. The rate of PTSD is different in different places, obviously. I would imagine it's extremely high in Ukraine right now. It's also high in other areas, all of Africa, and the European Union, not particularly, but they do have PTSD there. Northern Ireland would be another place, and our intention would be to seek a CE mark and market this in Europe, but we're going to pursue it in the United States first. Okay.
Then we have a question over here. What does breakthrough device designation mean?
So there's a softball question for me. The FDA came up with this concept that in order to help novel technology move forward more rapidly, that you could apply for getting designated as a breakthrough device. It took us a couple of months of negotiating with the FDA, in which we had to show a variety of things, that there wasn't a good solution on the market now, that the solutions that were there were solutions that had significant drawbacks that your product did not have, that it affected a condition that was dangerous to people's lives or to their actual life as opposed to their mental life. And once you get a breakthrough device designation, there are some benefits that go along with it. Among them are the FDA will advance your clinical trial you can go in and talk to them about how the clinical trial is going to be run, and they will comment on the trial. And then unusually they are bound by whatever they said was the case. And the result of that is that you can lock down the way your clinical trial is going to be performed early on, and they will comment on the trial for you. So it's a big advantage in terms of both timing and reputation, because not everybody gets a breakthrough device designation. They're rare and hard to come by.
Awesome. And
so Josh warned me to let you feed me the questions, Khalil, so that I don't inadvertently step over the boundary of what we can talk about and what not.
No worries. And
Okay.
do you wear the device all day?
Say again?
You wear the device all day?
You could wear it all day. The protocol that we gave to people was half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening. And that achieved the result we were looking for, which was a significant reduction in their PTSD symptoms and a significant improvement in their quality of life. But the interesting thing was everybody wanted it with them all day. They wanted it available to them, particularly if they thought they would be going someplace where they were concerned that they might be triggered. So for example, one person might be afraid of grocery stores. Seems odd, but they might be. Another person didn't want to go fishing if he had to drive down a dirt road. Even though he knew mentally there was no bomb on that road, he knew when things might be he might be concerned that he would be triggered. They're calling it triggered, meaning the trauma would come back, and he wanted it available. So yeah, you could wear it all day, or you could certainly keep it with you all day and put it in when you needed it. There is one other aspect of our device, which I didn't talk about much. It's a little technical, but it's a closed loop device. What a closed loop device means is it's reading biofeedback signals from the body. So if you were wearing it all day, it would be able to tell the level of stress you're under by measuring certain biofeedback signals. That happens to be heart rate variability, a subject matter on which I can assure you I can bore you to tears. But that's what it's measuring. And if it spots that you need a dose of stimulation, it can provide one. And if it sees you don't need one, it can turn one off. That's one of the distinctive characteristics of the device, which is IP protected. That is, it's in our patent. Other people can't do that.
And what sets you apart from the competitors?
Well, so I went over, I'll go over it again if it is of interest, but if you conceive of competition as being the legacy of technique out there, the drugs and the cognitive behavioral therapy, prolonged exposure therapy, we don't have any of their disadvantages, and we seem to work better than the rest of them. If you're talking about the fact that there are other people out there who also are biomechanical people and who also are capable of delivering vagal nerve stimulation, those people, none of them has picked PTSD as their target, which means they're not devising their device so that it's aimed at PTSD sufferers. They may be going for rheumatoid arthritis, that's one of them. And what sets us apart from them are, first, our focus on PTSD. So if you're a PTSD sufferer, we've got what we're targeting you for. And then there's this closed loop aspect of things which nobody else can do, which is we can dynamically adjust the stimulation you're getting depending on your need. So those people aren't in the marketplace with a PTSD device. So in that sense, they're not yet a competitor. They just could become one. And we know of a couple that are certainly interested in PTSD and are exploring it.
It goes without saying that this device is great for anyone who is in the active duty. Has there been any conversations with the military for a key partnership?
Yes. A couple of weeks ago, I was at the annual meeting of something called the Military Technology Enterprise Consortium, and almost all of the military's research people were there. Particularly, One Commander Steele, who's the head of JPC 5, stands for Joint Program Committee 5. That's military and operational medicine. He knows about Evren. He wants to learn more about Evren. He has offered to put us in touch with people who might work together with us. We also have 2 members of our scientific advisory board, both retired Medical Corps, Army Medical Corps colonels, both experts in PTSD, both of whom served in significant combat positions dealing with people with PTSD. And as I said, we have an Army small business technology transfer grant. The military is very interested in this, and we have the ability, I think, to exploit their interest because there's nobody else out there doing this. One of our board members in his last company, I served with him on the board of another company, and his final year with that company, he was successful in getting over $500 million worth of contracts for that company. And he works with us in our government opportunity assessment team, which looks at each possible funding source and determines whether we can successfully compete for it and whether we have the resources to compete for it. I really do expect us to generate millions of dollars of money from the military who is keenly interested in this. The Army STTR is to explore the use of our device in treating something called acute stress disorder, which is often what you get before you get PTSD. So if that's a successful program, and I expect it will be, then we'll have a chance to further make inroads in the military. We've also been invited, very few people are invited, to present a poster at the Military Health Science Research Symposium, MHSRS, where thousands of military related and military principal investigators, PIs, will be present. We'll be able to present the results of our pilot trial to a lot of people in the military, and that's next September. So yeah, we expect to exploit a lot the military's desire for this, and ultimately we expect to be able to sell it to military procurement activities as well as the VA.
Awesome. And speaking of buying, how can someone purchase the Phoenix? Is there a prescription that's required, or can it be purchased over the counter?
A prescription will be required. You can't purchase it yet because it hasn't been granted a de novo classification, so it's not available. And it won't be until we've done the pivotal trial and applied for the appropriate clearance from the FDA. Well, it's actually called a granting, but it will require prescription. However, we have a mechanism for handling that. You can do it online by having people click in and get to a doctor for a modest price, $20, describe their symptoms. The doctor says, yes, that sounds like PTSD, and then the prescription can be written. If you've been in a place where there was medical marijuana available, you can remember that you could go to a clinic, and the first thing you did when you went into the clinic was you met the doctor, and the doctor said, so what's your problem? You told him your problem, and he wrote you a script, and you walked into the back of the clinic, and you were prescribed the medical marijuana. We do not expect prescription to be an inhibition for people buying it. They won't be able to buy it, however, over the counter.
Yeah. Weaver, in your own words, what are the top reasons someone should invest into Evren?
Well, I think I went over these, but I'm happy to go over them again because I think they're the key to why you might want to invest in this company. And it's enormous market. It's unexploited. We have a market product which people want. So it's a big market, it's growing. People want the market, people want the product. As I told you, they didn't want to give it back. We got a 95.5 net promoter score. So you have product market fit, and there's some people that say they think that with good product market fit in a growing market, essentially a chimpanzee with a clipboard can be a success. I think we're a little better than that, but that's what you could do. We are at the moment the leader in pursuing PTSD. We're at that junction, as I told you, these two rapidly growing segments of bioelectronic medicine and wearable. Purely by accident, we're there, but we are there. We're on that bubble. There isn't much clinical risk left. There's obviously some. We have to do a clinical trial, so it's not gone entirely, but the evidence is it'll successfully pass the endpoints of that trial. We've been successful up until now in raising non-dilutive funding, and we're just getting started in that environment. We got that breakthrough device designation, which means we get an in with the FDA and some benefit for being seen by them as a good solution to a problem. We have leaders who have been successful in the past, and I see no reason why they won't be successful in the future. And then, as I said last but not least, this is desperately needed. These people need what we have, and you can help us get it to them. And I think you can end up doing well by doing good, by investing in this company. And now's the time to do it, because it will only get more expensive as time goes by.
Definitely. And yes, we are running a little low on time here. If you didn't have a chance to get your question answered, please send an email to info@everins.com, and we will be more than happy to get your question answered. Weaver, what can we do as someone who's wanting to learn more and want to help out even the current investors? What can we do to help out other than investing in Everin?
Well, that's an interesting question. I wasn't prepared for that one, Khalil. You get to ask one off the wall question every time. So there are a couple of things. First, what we need more than anything is what all startup companies need, which is adequate resources to move forward. So investing is important. Telling people about this investment, even if you're not going to invest, but if you know somebody who has PTSD, who could see that, I can't tell you what the investment minimum is because we're not allowed to, right? But if you have PTSD and you want a solution, this would be a good place to come move that process forward. Or if you have people in your family or that you know about. I have a nephew, my dad, and you'd like to find a way to help them. This would be a good way to do that. But just telling other people about what's available out there. Most people don't know that there's a possible solution to PTSD that doesn't have all of those drawbacks of drugs and therapy, like I said before. And then if you know people who are involved in these affinity groups like Together We Serve or Wounded Warrior or Tin Can that we're on the board of, tell them about us and we will respond to them. If you have PTSD and you want to be part of our patient advisory board, get in touch with us. Go to that info@everinvns.com and say you'd like to be a part of our patient advisory board. We talk to them frequently to tell them what we have in mind and to get feedback from them about what we might do better to make a better product or to approach what they need more than just guessing at what they need. So invest, tell other people to invest, tell other people about us, tell people who might need us to come talk to us, tell people who are PTSD patients and who want to be on our patient advisory board to come talk to us. The more of them we have, the better.
You're able to answer that question.
I just wanted to tell people it was off the cuff. I wasn't prepared for that one, Khalil.
Well, I do want to thank everyone who did attend the webinar today. If you weren't able to attend the webinar is recorded, so be on the lookout for a recap video of the webinar that will be posted onto the Raise page across social media as well as an email. So I do want to thank everyone who attended today. Weaver, Josh, thank you so much for today's webinar. I had a great time. Hope you guys did too. And I hope everyone has a great weekend. Have a good one.
Charles here. Drive on, as we used to say in the Army. Goodbye, all.